Welcome to What's Your Story, where we, Jamie Marco,
and Stan Brown,
delve into the extraordinary lives of everyday people.
Listen in as we uncover the unique tales that shape who we are,
one story at a time.
Hey, let's get ready to explore today's story.
Let's do it.
Whoa. What are you doing
Yes,
here?
I'm here in person today.
I'm curious, Dad. What makes you decide? So just for our listeners, when you can hear us, my dad lives by the crow fly, or how the crow flies, what, like a mile?
Depends how healthy the crow is. I throw the crow, often throw the bull.
Do you throw the bull? Yes, he throws lots of bull, listeners.
But the key life hack is far easier to throw a crow. No, actually, it's easier to throw the bull.
Oh, funny story, actually. So the other day, growing up, listener, my dad used to always ask me these like thoughtful questions, or not even thought-provoking questions. And he would say, what weighs more, a pound of feathers or a pound of bricks? And obviously, hopefully you guys know the answer to that. I'm not going to give it away, spoiler alert. But I asked your granddaughter that the other day, and she kept saying bricks, bricks. I'm like, listen to the question. What weighs more, a pound of feathers or a pound of bricks? And it's because she's learning right now about gravity, of that if you drop a feather or if you drop bricks, like what falls faster. So she just couldn't get, I'm like, listen to me, listen.
It kind of sounds like our conversation a few years ago.
Apple tree. But so my question to be is that you're here. So as the crow or the bull throws, you live like, I mean, what? Like if I were to fly it, it's probably not even a mile.
I did the golf cart once. It's about 5 miles above the golf cart. But the golf
that's
cart
like
is around
yeah,
it. But as a crow flies, probably maybe less than 2 miles.
Yeah, okay. Less than 2 miles. So we do choose, though, to do these most often where you are in your location and I am in my location just because of my work and your busy, busy retirement schedule, that it's easier to do it that way.
But as they say, one thing that's in top of mind as we senior citizens get older, you have to prepare for the eventuality that your children may be taking care of you sometime. So if I make a trip over here, someday I may not go back.
And fun fact, this used to be your house.
That's true.
Yeah.
But now the changes you made are outstanding.
Thanks.
And now it's totally your house.
Thanks. Appreciate that. So, but it's always
fun to be
here.
You know how you can tell whose house it is?
How?
Who pays the mortgage payment? In my house.
Oh, you're supposed to pay that thing? But I love that because for our listeners may not know that we were very fortunate enough to be able to buy the house that you lived in, not the house I grew up in, but a house that you lived in. But this house had so many really cool memories for us. Like when we got engaged. Oh yeah. No, yeah. When we got engaged, you were living in this house. So I think my husband proposed to you first in this house.
And I said, no, please marry my daughter.
And then when we got married, I got ready in this house. And then when we found out we were pregnant, it was upstairs. We were visiting you and we found out we were pregnant in this house. And then when I delivered, it was not in this house. But when she had her first birthday, it was in this house.
And she took her first steps in her house with his parents and your parents.
Yes, remember that? That was so cool. Like that, we could not have planned that any better, that she like started walking when you guys were all there. So cool.
Enough about us, though. This is
well, yeah. So it's nice to have you in my house, in your house, my house, our house.
And for those listening, today I am going back to my house today.
Yes, you're getting kicked out.
Under my own power.
But I do take care of you. I make dinner and absolutely. I offer to feed you. You just didn't want anything to eat today.
Well, I had my little bar. Did my bike ride this morning. Did my little workout. Did my push-ups.
Oh, nice. How many?
8.
Okay. All right. Well, today, I think that our guests will appreciate that you did your push-ups today.
Why?
Well, so I had the privilege of meeting this individual. I was going to say gentleman, and then I said individual, and I was going to say individualman.
Individual.
This gentleman.
Jamie overslept this morning.
Back in I think we met in 2009 or 2010. And we were both working on a project together and we met there. And I always, from that moment, thought that he was just this super cool individual, incredibly insightful, very much into yoga, into mindset, into just spirituality, but also has this
push-ups?
I bet he does push-ups.
Okay.
But also has this incredible love for travel and adventure and has his own podcast talking about that. So should we welcome him in?
I think you should.
Okay, let's do it. All right, here we go. Ooh, it says Psych D after it. I wonder what that means.
Well, I'm an NP,
Neuro, what?
neuroproctologist.
Hi, Dan.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey there, can you hear me or no?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and it's so
I
good
can't
to
hear
hear
you
you.
guys.
You can't hear us? Huh.
It might have to do with this mic. Let's see.
Oh, okay.
Better
Well,
mic, so I thought I'd
Mike,
help
I
out
love it.
the
I
whole
love
thing,
it.
but I
He
don't.
can't hear it. So you can't hear us, but we can hear you, which is interesting. I
Let
wonder
me
if
unplug it.
maybe it's, listener, we always have these things that we never know what's going to happen. So I'm going to let him know on the bottom to check your settings in the mic on Zoom. Dad, just tell us a story while I'm doing
uh, once upon a time, there was a podcast.
this.
And the problem was there was very little electricity in those days, and no one knew what a pod was. So they went to town hall. Hey, you better, Danny, can you hurry up? Because I'm running out of stuff here.
Isn't he just there? Doesn't he just look like a cool guy?
Yeah, he
Like,
did.
and I'm sorry, listener, that you can't see how cool Dan looks, but he looks like you need to go on YouTube and watch us as well as listen to us because it's just fun to be able to do that. Can you
Okay.
hear us now?
I think I got it.
I was saying that you just look like a cool guy, and I said that in the
Wow,
intro.
that's
I
cool.
know, but like first of
Your
all,
dad looks like a cool guy too, and of
he's
course you're
super
cool.
Back
I know
at
that.
you.
It's so good to see you. I introed, and we're recording live. We jump in and we record live.
I heard from your other episodes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You did some research. So I was telling my dad that we do like a little, intro before we bring you on. And I was saying, I think we met like in 2010, I think.
Wow, was it that long ago?
Yes.
That's about right. Yeah.
But do you even age? Like, what are you like? I mean,
What
you look,
about you?
no, look at, I mean, like, I'm like, holy cow. And I
Yeah,
was
but we don't have any filters on.
I might have a filter on actually. Now
No,
that I
this is
think about it.
unfiltered, this podcast. Totally unfiltered. We are like full on whatever. But it's
Good.
so good to see your
It's
face.
nice to see you too. Yeah, we had some nice work experiences together, right?
We did. We're like in Las Vegas and
Yes.
in, I don't remember, New York, maybe. I think, did we do a show in New York one
New
time?
York, yeah, maybe California.
Yeah,
Yeah,
San Francisco.
that's right.
Yeah, we would go out for some great meals. Oh my gosh. I think you took me to like a taco place once in San Francisco near the convention center.
I did. Wow. I don't remember that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Like are you a little bit of a foodie? And am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, I would say at this stage of life, yeah, with travels and all of life experiences and living mostly in New York, I could
Oh my,
qualify as a foodie, I would say.
I love it. I was just in New York, well, actually Hoboken, for
Oh,
work, and I came across, and we'll get into the podcast in a second, but I think this is really cool. This,
yeah.
I didn't tell you this yet. We went for lunch at a place called Wonder. Have you been to Wonder
No,
yet?
I don't know it.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so Wonder, you walk in and it's one big kitchen, but it's like 35 different high-end chefs that you could order something from them. So like what's his name? Andres. Jose Andres, he's on the menu. Like it's the
Oh,
coolest food concept. So we all walked in and you order on the tablet and you can order from these really famous chefs a meal that they cook and I guess they prepare it right there in the kitchen. It was unbelievable. Anyway, aside,
sounds wonderful.
let's jump into
No,
you.
that's how she was when she left.
That was wonderful.
Wonderful.
Wonderful, right?
I wonder
I
if
love
that's
it.
a thing. I
What's
wonder
that?
if that's like their part of their
Get
marketing.
into the
Okay,
podcast.
sorry.
Enough
Okay.
about you. Jeez, what
That,
the?
that was a great dad joke right off the top. My kind of guy. Love it.
All right, so we're gonna start how we typically start on a scale of 1 to 10 today, Dan. With 10 being it's the best day you've ever lived. You don't have a worry in the world. To a 1 being that you probably should not have gotten out of bed and be peopling. And I stole that as a verb from a girl I met once not too long ago. What's your number today?
It's a great question. I would say it's about an 8.
Ooh. What
Yeah.
would it take to have you go from an 8 to an 8.25?
What would it take? Just probably time because I'm used to hanging in the realm between 8 and 10 on that question, and that I can say really without fear of contradiction.
Yeah.
And I just think it's about um, opening up to the moment, not trying to control it, because life will present plenty to be grateful for or happy about or connected to, if you just give it a beat. But I try to answer as honest as possible because I'm like, I'm about to go on vacation, which is a wonderful thing. So you would think maybe even higher than 8, but I'm also sandwiching this between so many appointments, my patients and some coaching clients. So there's a little bit of that tension in the air, and do I have everything and passports and all that stuff. The stress, as you probably know, can be positive or negative, right? So even when you're looking forward to something, you can feel keyed up. Yeah.
I
So
love
that's what I
that.
would say.
I will attest to the fact that you live in that space because I can remember working with you in some situations where we were frustrated or annoyed or just like tired and hungry. And you were always just like, it's cool. It's cool. It is what it is. Like, we're going to do this. It's going
He's
to
a
happen.
balanced
He
professional.
is. Where does that come from? Like,
I'm glad you have that memory of me, first
I
of
do.
all.
Well, I'm
I don't always have that memory of myself. Where
happy.
does it come from? It's a good question. I honestly can
Experience.
tell you,
I think that's
yeah,
the way I
for
think.
sure, experience, but
I was talking about this.
a lot of hard work, and not everybody has that experience of you having to work hard at these things.
Right.
I find people project onto me a lot that I'm like the Zen guy and like I take everything as right. But I don't, I mean, when I look at my own history, my childhood, and like my experience, I don't feel that way. I feel like it's an every day, every moment, like staying on it, working at it, flexing those muscles, bringing that part of my brain to the gym, if you will,
Yeah.
and but I don't mind it. I don't begrudge the work. It's good, but it's about like, exercising awareness, exercising gratitude, exercising non-catastrophic thinking, you know.
Well, tell us a little bit about that because that sounds like that's part of the core foundation of your story about how you
Mm.
got to be doing what you're doing today, like how whatever happened, in your childhood or your adolescent life led you to where you're
Yes.
today. Tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
but first off, what is PSY period D period?
That is, yeah, that's an academic title that stands for a doctorate in psychology. And you might be used to seeing PhD often in that levels, which is really the philosophy of whatever you're studying. So you can have a PhD in English. It's really the philosophy of the
Sure.
study of English, or the PhD in psychology would be the philosophy of psychology. PsyDs came about in the 70s when there was kind of a call and a wish for more people who were interested in practicing psychotherapy and being ready to do so when they got out of grad school. Because a lot of the academics and the researchers, the PhDs in psychology, they might have gone there eventually, but they weren't really trained in grad school on how to do that. So they made two avenues basically. That's the long story for that, how that came about.
Okay,
So I
cool.
knew I wanted to practice, so I went for the PsyD.
What led you there to want to practice that?
Yeah. We could have like 4 podcasts. I think I can't speak for everybody, but I observed that a lot of people that move into the helping profession in one way or another, we don't go in it clear of our own demons, our own difficulties, and I'm certainly no exception. I've had certain childhood experiences that were traumatic, that were challenging, that left me, anxious, insecure, uncertain. I'm condensing a lot, for the purpose of the podcast. I don't mind talking about it at all, but and I think what that did for me was that I remember being at a crossroads where I could have gone down a path of destructiveness or just letting it all fall apart, or maybe riding the wave of wherever life took me, or I was going to kind of like use some of these experiences to get curious and really figure out like how to either overcome or to grow. Thank God, and I say God specifically, it came with a combination of me being a very people-centered person and also interested in things like science and academics. So that combination kind of led me down the path of like studying people.
How old
And
were you when you
I was an N of one. I was my first subject.
And then, what stage in your life, what age-wise were you at when you hit the crossroad?
That's a good question. I would say it was probably around like between like 11 and 13,
Oh,
11,
Oh,
12,
wow.
that's
and
really
13.
young.
Yeah, I
Wow.
was pretty young. Yeah.
Very
I think
developmental age, very important age, especially for young men.
Yes, absolutely. And the way that translated was I just became, as many people who have dealt with some trauma in their life, super independent. Probably to a fault. That's come back around at various times, and hopefully now at this age learning to be interdependent, right? Like, so not shutting out the world, like I don't need anybody or any help, but also not being overly dependent on or victimized, right? And I think that's what we try to do in psychotherapy, is help people strike that balance. So yeah, I'd say 11, 12, 13, there were a lot of changes happening in my life. My parents divorced when I was about 4, and it led me on this path of just being very, very independent, but probably at too young an age. There was a lot of anxiety that comes with that. So I was pretty much out of the house and on my own at 15 or 16. There was
Wow.
I wanted to go to college. I know I had certain capacity for that, but there was no funds and things like that. So went on a very, work hard, do hard, push yourself to the max kind of pathway. Not all bad. I mean, resilience, learning how to, handle challenging situations, but a lot of anxiety, like what's going to happen
But you
next.
stayed on the path. I mean, there's so many things to take you off the path, push you backwards.
Yeah. Oh, and believe me, it wasn't a straight line. I mean,
Never is.
I had my moments and my setbacks and my fallbacks, but yeah, ultimately I did stay on the path with a lot of support and help from key people, teachers here, professors there, certainly my friendship network, just extensive, really, really important and wonderful even to this day. you know and then you start to have a change in the way you look at your own past when you get through it, when you get past it, which also happens in psychotherapy, which is that we don't go back and change the actual events of what happens in the past, but we can start to shift our mind about the perspective and what all the people that were involved were going through themselves, which
Mhm.
develops a certain capacity for empathy within us,
Mhm.
which grows what I ultimately have been exploring the most of now, which grows our capacity to love.
Yeah.
As hippy dippy as that might that might sound, which I don't mean it that way,
I love
but
that.
but yeah, seriously, like love has become such an unbelievable, like powerful force in both what I do, how I do it, how I understand myself and the world. And when you have a young version of love, it's like romantic love, or it's fantasy, or maybe
Oh,
it's
it's lust.
erotic.
Yeah.
It's erotic love at certain points, right? But there's so many different levels. Like the Greeks have 4 or 5 words for love, right? And other languages too. We really just have one, but there's so many different types,
Mhm.
right? There's the family type of love, there's the
Sure.
brotherly love, there's friendship, and then
Mhm.
there's that transcendent type of love, which I think ultimately we're driving toward, like that agape, right? That unconditional love, the
Yeah.
love that we might feel if we're people of faith, from
Sure.
God, or
Yeah.
the love that we have for our children, perhaps.
Dan,
It
can
goes.
you liken the experience when you're looking back that you're getting more of an objective view of yourself versus rather than subjective, which is in the present?
That's a good question. We'd have to unpack a little bit about what we mean by objective, because this gets into truth, I think.
Because you're kind of seeing your old self, but you're viewing it as your new self.
Yes, yes. I can't, I happen to believe that we never get away from the subjective. It's kind of like quantum mechanics, where the things that you're observing are affecting the truth of the thing itself. And how do we get away from that perspective of our own observation of stuff? But
Mhm.
I do think that you get, if not more objective, more uh, layered,
Mhm.
more integrative, more truth, more things that can be seen that were not seen before,
Yeah.
which is no fault of the person going.
Sure.
Because we can only see a certain amount with our brains at any developmental level, right? But integration has been a big topic lately, where I just, the older I get and the more that I explore myself and the world, things just seem to have more of a relationship than a separation for me, whether that's work and play, whether that's how I understand my family, even the cultures and the peoples and the worlds around us, politics. We could get into so many different things.
Let's not get into that last part.
No, I know.
Too late for that.
No, but I think
The only way I discuss politics is just sort of like from an aerial view of like just seeing like the patterns of what we do from time to time, no matter what your perspective on politics is, right? It's like we get into the same relational patterns about it. But go ahead.
It's always, I think it's interesting because we talk a lot about like self-awareness, and I'm sure you talk about that. Like that's a big piece of like people repeat the same patterns because they're not aware of that they're doing that. And I had a conversation recently with somebody who I was saying, someone I know, a friend who I know, and another friend interacted with them and said, "Oh my gosh, you be careful. They're super stressed out. Like be careful when you talk to them." I felt like I was walking on eggshells when I was talking with them. And so I told that friend, I said, "It sounds like you're pretty stressed out, And they said, "Well, how did you know that?" And I said, "Well, so-and-so said," because I'm not hiding secrets, I'm there to help people, that she felt, you were kind of like on edge a little bit. What does she know? This is her job and she shouldn't be, she doesn't know the stress that I'm carrying and this, all that. I said, hold on a second. I said, take a step back. Just because you're stressed out doesn't mean that her stress is any different than your stress, right? Like we all, I think, like we talk about trauma or we talk about things that maybe haunt us or things that we all have our different path, and we become very selfish in our own world that we don't realize other people are struggling through that. And so it's interesting to hear you say that, most people that are in your role have their own demons, but I'm getting to a question here. How does that help you now, knowing how you, at 11, 13, were able to kind of fight through? How does that help you now help your patients as well too?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just if I can make sure that I have it right, like how does your own self-awareness and what you've gone through looking back and maybe the work I've done on myself help me work with patients currently?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a long way to get there that I got there, but yes.
Oh, I just want to make sure I had your question right. Yeah. So it's really a very interesting topic we're exploring right now because there's so many levels to this. The short answer to it is that if the person doing the helping is not aware of what's going on with themselves, they can be harmful, right? That's just the first level. So it's so necessary and so required. And one of the top questions I get asked as a psychologist is, "Oh, you have to be in your own therapy, right?" That's what I hear. And sadly, no, we don't have to be. But please stay away from any therapist that doesn't explore themselves. It doesn't have to be necessarily therapy. I'll go as far as to say that there's lots of ways to understand self and explore. There's faith-based and there's coaching now, which is very popular. But a therapist is not willing to look at their own demons or their own self can be harmful. That's my bias and opinion, and I'm not alone in that idea. But the other thing, which is a little bit more detailed, pulling back the curtain of psychotherapy a bit, is that what's going on in that room is not some expert who's sitting on high who knows all these things that's going to impart to you by their grace, how you should live your life or what you should do. It's not really advice giving, but it gets portrayed or seen that way. It's really, there's something happening in the room between two people relationally. Now, this isn't talked about a lot, right? That's why we have words like transference and countertransference. You might have come across that, right? There's something very active happening in there that mirrors in some way that person's real life outside. So it's vital that the therapist, the person, the helper, whether that helper is a pastor or a rabbi or coach or a therapist or a teacher, knows thyself, right? That's why that we have that phrase, to see when I'm feeling things and I'm going through something in this room, Zoom room or in person, is that my stuff? Or is that their stuff? I
Yeah.
better know the difference. Could be both,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
But I
wow.
better know what's going on. If I keep getting angry every time patient X comes in my room,
Yeah.
could be because as a therapist, I'm just an angry guy.
Yeah.
But more than likely, it could be because this person gets people angry.
Yeah.
And that's got to be handled very gently and with consideration and timing and all that. That's where the art of therapy comes in. So I hope I answered your question, like as you give some insight into that. Yeah.
Totally. And that's not what I was hoping to get into this conversation, but it just led down that path. By the way, do you watch that show Shrinking on Apple TV?
Everyone's telling me about it. I got to check it out. I haven't seen it.
It's really funny. It's a good laugh. But so you were talking, you said a couple times about relationships and exploring and finding different ways to heal yourself and learn about the world. And you are somebody who I get to, over the last, whatever, 14 years, we've stayed connected through Facebook and I get to see some of your posts. You certainly live that life. Like you
Oh
are,
no, you've been following that, huh? That crazy.
yes. Hey, don't post it if you don't want us to see it, like
I know, right?
you really
Clearly, I want to be
have.
seen. So
Yeah, no, but it's amazing. And like you've been like you post about, tell us a little bit about that side of your world, where that comes from.
that gets back to integration. And thanks for coming to that. Yeah, like I in one of the benefits of looking at yourself, and you got to do this just as a side note, like in a way, and I don't know how well I do this or not, but in a way that's not so self-indulgent, right? And so like, look at me, that it becomes narcissism, right?
You're not
And
posting like
I,
every meal and every second of what you're doing every day. You're posting like, yeah, so you're not one
that's
of the,
good. That's good feedback. Thank you. Yeah, because
yeah.
and some of my friends will joke me about that this level I'm talking about, like because I am an only child, right? So that comes through every once in a while, right? Like,
Oh, I have one of those.
maybe
So.
one too, yeah, right, maybe one too many selfies in a week or something. But
No.
my argument is always like I'm always traveling alone, so I have to take a picture of myself, like but so you try to self-explore and learn about yourself in a way that's not like so like, oh my god, look at me, and I it's just all about me. But at the same time, there's joy in sharing what you discover, and like there's joy in sort of like putting out there something that might be helpful to somebody else through the vehicle that's closest to me as possible, which is the self, right? So that's a little bit of a long way of getting to your question, which is the integration for me has been life itself, right? My own therapy. I have an Instagram and a Facebook professional page when I try to put in little blurbs or videos about something that I've learned either through working with my patients or my own therapy, a tip on stress or something. But the big thing that I think you may be referring to is travel, and I caught a virus when I was 20 years old. It was a good virus. It was called the travel bug, and it happened by accident. Like accident meaning like I particularly, if you looked at and tracked my record, I was not supposed to be the guy that traveled the world, that been to 60 countries and worked my way around and all that, because I thought I was never going to leave Long Island. I had no resources, like I had a family who, I always joke that my mom's idea of traveling was like either going to the Busy Bee Mall in Massapequa or the Roosevelt Mall in Levittown, which was 20 miles away, which isn't exactly true. She traveled a little bit more than that, but yeah, it had no models or anything except for friends, like, so I had a best friend, still do, and he was like, I'm going to France next semester for college. I said, well, how do you just do that? You can't just go to France, you hardly know the language and stuff. He's like, well, yeah, you kind of can, he came from a family that traveled and sort of had a precedent for that, but he pushed me to do that. Studied in England for a semester, and that's where I got the good virus and learned that I can do this, I can travel. but had no, had no money or resources. So, but I had a work ethic and a willingness to suffer. The suffering part comes from wrestling. I was a wrestler since I was 7 years old, and every wrestler will tell you this, that you just learn to, you know, push your body to the max without any food in it, and you get on the mat every time. It's crazy. I mean, when you look back on it, it was like, to think that I would want to do something like that to somebody I love right now. That's why I know my mother. That's how I know my mother was my Italian mother was crying every time I had to suck weight and stuff like that. But it taught me so much. Like, it taught me like what I was made of, like what I could do. So with $400, and that's a true story, in cash in my pocket. I went to Europe with my backpack, and there's no safety net, right? So there was nothing to come back to, or if I ran out of money.
Like, what
This
year was
was
that?
1980, 19. Oh, that trip was 1992, because it was
Okay.
before grad
Yeah.
school. So
So
this is after
listeners,
studying abroad, and then which was I barely made it to that too. I worked as a cabana boy the summer before to save my money to be able to pay for that.
well,
But
that's a
400,
story itself, I'm sure.
yeah, it's a story. Flamingo Kid in live. No. But yeah, $400 in a backpack and a willingness to work. And yeah, I ate one meal a day. I slept outside, and I found work. I worked for my room and board, but I had amazing experiences. I'm writing my second book right now called The Journey Within, and it's all about these travel experiences, but not just the experiences, like the psychology that I learned out of it, and trying to put in like little pieces and vignettes about how that translated into some of the things that are going on in my life now. But anyway, did that for 4 months, and I said, wow, I can do this. And on the way, I met people. I thought I was cool with my backpack, and I was doing this on the, and I met like people with, like, how long have you been traveling? I've been traveling for 2 years, I'm traveling for 18 months. And they were usually Aussies or Kiwis, people from New Zealand, Australia, or sometimes England. And it made my trip look like peanuts. So then I went on another trip for 15 months. And
Like, I'll show them.
yeah, well, I couldn't even hold a candle to them, but they inspired me. So I went to Africa, and I went to Asia, and I went right around
On
the
your
world.
own, by yourself?
Yeah, I was all by myself. Yeah, this is after grad school. I hung the carrot in front of my nose with my dissertation. I said, if you finish this dissertation on time, you're going for 15 months. And of course, everybody tells you in these moments, you don't do that. You got to, right after you get your doctorate, you can't have a gap. You got to work. You got to get your clinical hours, because I still had you have to take the test. And I was so anxious, back to anxiety again, because I felt this pull to do something that I knew I wasn't going to have an opportunity to do again, probably in that way. But I went, and great decision. Great to say. I learned more in that 15 months than I did in 10 years of higher education.
Amazing. And
So
there was
those are some.
no, like, listener, if you're not aware, back in 92 and in the 90s, there was no smartphone, and even in the early 2000s, to take pictures of all those journeys. So do you have like albums and albums of actual real photos of your
Can I
journeys?
can I add, in 92 also no internet to speak of.
Yes,
It
nothing.
was just, there was
Your
phone.
mom must have been freaking out. Like, was she like,
Freaking out. Every call, there was a lot of tears, and
and were they collect calls back then?
I remember having a calling card that I used very
Wow.
sparingly because of the money thing again. But I
Sure.
was in India one time, and I'll tell you, this kid who was about 11 years old walked me a mile back to his home in the country, where he had a hand cranked generator that would allow me to like use the phone. And I don't know how these mechanics work, but
Wow.
just to get a call out, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm eating, okay, bye, one of those things.
Well, I think that's the thing, is that, I think that that's such an incredible experience, and there was no way to connect. So how were you, like, have you kept in touch with anyone that you met along those ways? And how were they like writing letters? Is there like a bottle in the ocean somewhere? Like, how did you keep in touch with all these people, if you did?
I keep in touch with so many of them, Jamie. A lot of what you're seeing on Facebook
Yeah.
and the incredible experiences has been from the growing connection to those folks and staying in touch with them from across the world and visiting them, you know. So how, you know, you found each other eventually when the internet was there, and, you know, I kept addresses. I have them, you know, like still written, handwritten. So it started with mailing postcards and letters, and then, you know, everyone got email addresses eventually. And I was right on the cusp of that, right? So it was the 90s. The second trip with the 15-month around the world, it was 98, 98, 99. So
AOL.
now there were internet cafes, and, you know,
Yeah.
you didn't have the smartphone yet, but you had places
Yeah.
to stop in and have more real-time, you know, communication. But
So cool. My dad did that. You traveled Europe after college, did you?
That was back in the early 70s.
Yeah.
awesome.
Different time.
How long did you go for?
It was, I think, 2 months.
Okay, yeah.
That's great.
Unusual.
Yeah, by yourself, right?
Yeah, you've always been people over there traveling. Hooked up someone who had a car, and you travel all different countries and stuff. But
Do you think that it's as, I mean, you know, my husband's English, and so all of my nieces and nephews, they travel, like it's in their blood to travel. It is just, and it's easier, I believe, to travel when you're living in Europe, to go to Asia, to go to, you know, Africa, because you're just closer to those continents. But
Right.
do you think that had, you know, someone be your age today, like that age you were then today, it's just as easy to do those things today? Or do you think because of things have changed, it was easier to travel when you did it then?
Oh,
That a
easier.
solo
Yeah.
traveler, or like safer, or like, you know, like I'm just wondering like what's changed in 30 years per se,
Yeah.
right?
People will argue with me about this, and maybe quite rightly. Everybody has different experiences, and the
You
world
can
has,
say that my shirt is like teal or green today, and people will argue with you. So they're going to argue no
right.
matter what, right? So
That's
I
true.
don't
That's
even know
true.
what color this is, to be honest with you.
I think teal's a good guess. That's what I would go with that. No, but what I'm about to say is that, like, I always observed and felt that all of the limitations in terms of easy and hard is in our mind, right? Now, when I say that, I run the risk of imparting this false idea that, like, there's not unsafety in the world. There is, you know. I grew up in New York. I'm always got my you know, eyes over my shoulder, and almost, you know, if I'm meeting you for the first time, immediately I'm thinking, what's the angle? You know, it's guilty until proven innocent, until, you know. But it's really about how you're showing up, what your awareness is, how well you can read and know people. And I'm sure, Stan, you've experienced this from your travels. You know, you get to know people, and you start to understand the vibe, and who you can jump into a car with, and, you know, who you can't. And, you know, now not everybody does that at the same level, you know. And I've been purposely on my podcast interviewing single women travelers, because usually what I get is, oh yeah, of course you could go travel the world. You know, you were a guy, and, you know, and really what I learned the most from was from single women travelers, on how to stay safe, on how to build relationships. I give all the credit to the folks, to the girls, women I met in that way, because they did it, and they, again, made my trip look simple, like, you know, easy.
You have to meet my friend Melanie Hicks. We talked with her, and she's done that. You guys would just, I mean, you have to connect. She's traveled, I think, to probably about, how many countries was she? Like almost 60 countries too? Close. You guys need to meet. So yeah, so traveled by yourself as well too. And I am one of those people that always says, how do you do that? Like how, and I've traveled a lot alone, but never to Europe. I mean, I guess technically I was meeting people there, so not really, but like, you know, I think that's
Yeah.
really, I mean, that's incredible. But, you know, thinking about like $400 in your pocket, would that
Yes.
even be doable today?
I no, not that little. But I even found that was pretty extreme, you know, and that all had to do with my will and my desire to be able to do something like that. Like, I wasn't going to let myself not have that experience. I was willing to put up with stuff, you know, and sometimes it was tough. In my journals, it's like, you know, I got lonely, I got hungry, I was like, you know, but then when something happened, when I found a job, you know, it was like amazing thing that would happen, or be the recipient of somebody's kindness, you know, that could invite me in, or, you know, share a meal with me. You know, I got a job as a DJ in Greece. There was a
No way. Oh gosh, that
I
could be
got
that
off.
and the Cabana Boy stories. I don't know. You could be like a new NBC like television show drama.
There you go. I got off the
Or maybe that
overnight
would have to
ferry.
be like on HBO or Max.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. There's some stories. Yeah, I got off the overnight ferry from Brindisi, Italy to Santorini, Greece, and there was a little sign like pinned to the tree, DJ with a question mark. And I just sort of like followed the sign. I pulled the sign up DJ and I just kept walking and kept walking. And it ended up at the end of the island in Parissa Beach. And there was this short little Greek man. He just looked up to me. He said, DJ. And I sort of like looked to the left and right. And I was like,
You said, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Was that like cassettes? Was that like records? Was that
Cassettes.
vinyl?
Cassettes. I had my Red Hot Chili tape cassettes, and he was wanting me. He just kept saying, "Play up music, play up music," you know. And I was a DJ at college, so I had a little experience. I
Okay.
wasn't completely lying, you know, about that. And but what I had, which maybe is a little bit of a special sauce that I carry around with me, if I do say so myself, which is the extroversion, right, of like talking to people, right. So he had a new club, and he just wanted to piece something together. I went on that beach on Parissa Beach. I walked up and down that beach and talked about Club Deja Vu like it was the best thing since sliced bread. I'm like, did you hear about the new club? You know, the new club? And you're never gonna guess. I am guest DJing tonight. And I had that whole place completely filled. We were dancing on the tables, you know,
Oh,
and this guy
wow.
was like kissing my hand, you know, like so I could get choked up just talking about
I
that, right?
love
How'd
that.
you wind up leaving?
Yeah, why'd you
Well,
leave?
yeah. I mean, you know, you can only like sleep on the roof and get paid in like ouzo and, you know, spaghetti for so long before you got to move on,
What's
you know.
funny during your travels, when you're traveling alone, a lot of things go through your mind, of course, where your next step is, the anxiety. But when you
Yeah.
made those connections, whether it be with the job temporarily or the DJ, the connections brought everything back into focus. It all made sense at that point.
Oh, that's a great perspective. Yeah, you're right. I never quite framed it in my mind that way, but that's true. And you see what it's all worth. You know, you see what like I say suffering. I mean, there's people that are really suffering in the world. I mean, my suffering was maybe going a night or two with like, where am I going to sleep? Or, you know, but like
Or back
it makes it
to
makes it yeah, right. It
But
makes it all worth it. You know, it makes that experience of like, hey, things might get tough again, worth it because you
true.
feel like it's leading towards something. And then think of all the parallels in life, right? Which, by the way, as a side note, I think we're missing today. I'm going to sound like an old fogey, you know, like back in the day, but like, is this ability to like distress tolerance, right? Ability to like tolerate a little bit of something not going your way for a while, you know? And like think of the like I think of my doctorate degree, which was terribly painful, you know, like the dissertation and like all that stuff. Like, you know, you do things for something else, you know, like you know you're planting seeds for a harvest that's coming. But I think one of the pieces of mental health issues now is people get very upset and anxious once they start to have some distress or things aren't easy or they're dealing with some discomfort, you know. If I could give the world something right now, I try to do this in my therapy sessions, is to just everybody take a collective breath when there's some discomfort or when you don't have what you want or your desires aren't being met, you know.
Yeah.
There's something very powerful and rich about that because guess what? The world is going to show you that you're not going to get what you want all the time. And there's going to be breakups and there's going to be pain and there's going to be loss and death and, you know, illness. But
You know,
that's not
people
all there is, right?
Yeah.
but in the developmental process, even with parents, no one's really teaching you coping mechanisms, how to deal with the stress that's involved. Be as relaxed as you can. Let things roll off of you. Like the Chinese always say, better to maintain a very steady attitude. Don't ever get too happy or too sad. Keep an even keel. But no one teaches you. They have you really you were on your own search basically, which is the way most people wind up that way.
What you're talking about is equanimity. Yeah, I think that's what I would say is right. How to move toward that balance. Yeah, it's often not taught unless you come from, you know, a family that studied that or is you know learning about that. But it can be learned,
Remember,
which gets full circle, right? Like about, you know, the working hard at it, you know, it
yeah.
can be learned.
Did I remember correctly? Do you do yoga? Did I remember that about you?
Yeah, I teach it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I
There's all
thought so.
this
We were talking.
integration, right?
I
Yeah.
thought I remember that correctly because that's a lot of breath work, right? Like yoga is a lot of that breathing through and understanding, depending on like what kind of yoga you're doing. But I was
That's
something
right.
that
Depending on what kind.
Yeah, depending on what kind. Like Kundalini, that's more breathing, right? I think. Am I right? Am I wrong? I don't know.
Well, it's all involved in breathing. Kundalini is a really powerful practice that relies very heavily on certain types of pranayama, right? Breath control exercises that create certain experiences in the body.
Got
But
it.
all of yoga should rely on breathing in some level. I had a really unique experience because when I took my first yoga class, it wasn't like what you see today at a gym where the teacher comes out and is playing music and it's very focused on posture,
You're like, yeah.
right? Yeah.
Exactly.
My first yoga class was sitting at the foot of this little gray-haired lady from Calcutta with a sari on, who was sitting up on the platform, and she would say, "What is mind?
Wow.
Who are you?" This was yoga class. Okay? And she says, "Why do you think you're that?" Well, who am I? I'm a psychologist. I'm a student.
Yeah.
What makes you say that? Just exploring. And then maybe with 10 minutes left in the class, she'd say, "Everybody up into bridge pose, Setu Bandhasana." And then we'd hold it for like 5 minutes. And then she'd say, I might be exaggerating a little. And then she'd
Blood
say,
rush into your head. You're like, I can't anymore. My head's gonna explode.
well, then she'd say, "Release." And we'd all release the pose. And then she'd say, "Yoga is only about release." And then she'd leave. And that was class.
Wow.
So asana, you're going to get me going now. You're bringing
I
me
love it.
That's good.
Hey, yoga saved my mental health. So it
Asana is one branch of an 8-limbed yoga. Asana is what Americans think yoga is.
okay.
I might get a lot of flack for this. There's many people who know yoga in America, but it's become what Americans do. They take the piece that they like and they build that up. So asana, or body postures, these poses and getting into the pose, that's not yoga. The poses were developed so that we can have a mind with equanimity, because the world and the impressions of every day, sitting at a computer, dealing with kids, dealing with a tough boss, health issues, make our body constrict. And when your body constricts, the mind constricts. So you do postures, and the release of the pose is the most important part. We focus on getting into the pose. Let's see if you can do headstand this week.
Yeah.
This is just we've made it one more exercise thing to achieve, Anyway, that's a little soapboxy, but so that's
gosh,
one branch.
it's gonna change the way I do yoga now, but continue. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted
Cool.
you.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm interrupting you too.
No, not at all. I love it.
Second branch is pranayama, breath control.
All right.
And then I might not have these in the right order, but the third and fourth are the yamas and the niyamas, which are really the closest thing yoga has to moral codes. We know this from our religious traditions, but it's basically observances and abstentions, things we stay away from. So abstentions like, non-stealing, non-violence. In Sanskrit, non is denoted by the a. So parigraha is grasping. Aparigraha is non-grasping. So that's why you might hear some yogis say, don't attach to all your desires. Don't attach to everything that you're trying to chase. When we exhale the breath, we feel a breaking of that attachment, right? Of that having to chase. I might be hungry, or I might be wanting something, or I might want a cigarette, or I might want a beer. But somehow when we have a yoga class, magically, that chasing goes away for the moment.
100%.
That's a release. So yamas and niyamas. So we have asanas, pranayama, yamas and niyamas. Then the fifth is pratyahara, which is withdrawal of the senses, bringing the senses in. Why would we do that? The senses are out chasing all day long. Taste, sight, hearing. This creates impressions in the body that aren't always so great, tensions, right? So we need some time to withdraw the senses inward. That's what yoga does. We keep a couple of senses open if we're practicing, right? Like our sight, because we're watching the teacher, or our listening if we're doing a yoga nidra, which is the practice that I teach, actually. It's really very profound. Then there's dharana, which is concentration. It's what most of us are doing when we say we're meditating. We're just trying to concentrate on one thing, the breath. Then there's dhyana, that's 7, that's meditation. And then samadhi, which is the 8th branch, which is transcendent consciousness. Once in a while you might meet somebody who's in samadhi. They just seem to be like floating about a half an inch off the ground. They're just
I
like
think we already have.
Yeah.
very integrated. Oh,
or like
hardly,
really, like right there.
hardly. They're integrated, like everything just seems a little bit lighter in their speech, in their demeanor, in their countenance, So yeah.
And you teach today, like someone can come take a yoga class with you.
I teach special classes. Like I don't do it regularly. So I'll pop into a yoga studio that I like and say, hey, I'm a psychologist. I teach a little this yoga nidra, which is a very psychologically oriented practice. You go into deep relaxation. I'm on Insight Timer. I teach on there. Do you know that app? It's like a free app for like breathing and meditation and guided imagery. I teach yoga nidra on there. That's good for your listeners if people like yoga and meditation. Insight Timer, it's a really wonderful. You got like access to like 30,000 teachers around the world.
Really?
Yeah, and you can pay for some courses or you can get the free ones. All my stuff is free on there.
So we put your name in, you'll pop up.
Yes, Dan Guerra, PsyD. You'll see my picture there.
That's so cool. It's just it's interesting because I say that my dad. We've talked about this a couple of times with some other guests. My dad was really big into yoga growing up and tried to get us. I have 2 sisters, and so he would practice all the time. He would find 10 minutes when he was working to go and do some more yoga.
That's
and
awesome.
Got me into it, and so when I was living in Chicago, I would go all the time there. I remember sometimes I would just be in that room, just the energy, and I remember laying on my mat in vinyasa pose, and just is it vinyasa? Is that right? Is that the right word?
Shavasana.
Shavasana. Sorry, Shavasana. And just crying. And everyone else is going through their poses, but I just felt like it was a great release just being there on the mat. Yeah. Oh yeah, the release. Like you talked about that release.
That's right.
I'm curious, with all of your travels, do you speak multiple languages?
I'll quote a good friend of mine that I do some executive coaching with. He's from Switzerland. He speaks extensively 5 languages and can give our coaching programs in all languages. He says about me, you got to picture him with his horn, his rimmed glasses, metal glasses, very, thin, and he's in his 70s. He says, Dr. Guerra speaks 8 languages. He speaks 3 words in each language. Which is about the truth. Yeah. Maybe Italiano a little bit more, because I studied it in school. But no, interestingly, when I was in Thailand teaching English, for 4 months and stuff, I picked up the Thai language, right? And I was grooving. I was able to communicate a little bit. But can I speak a lick of Thai now? Kapung krap is thank you, I think. But yeah, not a whole lot.
You're the perfect one to ask. Is there a lot of cutting edge therapy going on with the utilization of light and sound?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm talking to myself. Think, Dan. I want to say more that I know of in sound, particularly in the realm of trauma, with alternating sounds. You might have heard of EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization. It's therapist scans the fingers back and forth and the eyes move. And this has been really profoundly helpful for people that have dealt with trauma. And we're trying to figure out why exactly that is. Stanford's doing all the research. That's where the person who created EMDR was a researcher who figured that out. But with that, there's also sound variations that also have the same effect for some reason. It has to do with distraction and helping the person, I like to say, metabolize the trauma into a different part of the brain that can handle it, because it's stuck in a loop of a very primal part of our brain, which is why people have such disproportionate and strong reactions to things.
Wow. Does EDM help with that? Just kidding.
EDM? Yeah, exactly. Could. You never know.
Is there a DJ that,
Yeah, right.
all right. So we know that we are sandwiched in between your patients and all that good stuff. So I just have like one last question. Where is somewhere you have not been that you are looking to go? I know you're headed on vacation soon. So is that,
Yeah.
maybe we'll tell me, where are you going on vacation?
I'm going to Sicily, which I've never been to. I've never been there, but I've been to Italy, but I've never been to Sicily. So that'll be nice. But that's a little bit more of a kind of like an easy vacation. I say easy. I gotta make things hard. I still got a little wrestler in me, but no, I wanna hike the Andes in maybe Argentina or Chile, get into that region. I hope I have that right. I know it's one of the two, or it could be both. Where else do I want to be that I haven't gone? I'd like to go to the remote areas of like Scandinavia. Like there's islands that are owned by Sweden and Norway that are really remote.
Yeah.
We would hardly have heard of them, but I know I come across them every once in a while. And I've been as far as Swedish Lapland, like close to the Arctic Circle.
Oh, wow.
And so that area is really interesting to me. It's just kind of has its own unique culture. It's doesn't follow the usual European, what we think of as Scandinavia, and they're really isolated over there. So those are two off the bat.
I love that. Are you still in Long Island, or are you in New York City proper? Like not proper, but you know what I mean? Like
Actually, I haven't been living on Long Island since I was 18, believe it or not. Yeah, I was in the city for most of my adult life, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens. But now I live in Beacon, New York, in the Hudson Valley since 2017.
Great area.
And I love it. It's really wonderful up here. I live at the base of a mountain. I go hiking every week. And
how far from New York City is that?
It's about 70 miles, 75 miles.
Okay.
Yeah, just up the Hudson River, if you know that. Where are you living?
I'm in Florida, so I'm on the west coast of Florida.
Oh, okay.
So if you ever make it down here to the wild, wild Florida,
yeah,
you let us know. We're in a place called Lakewood Ranch. We're kind of nestled between Tampa and Fort Myers, in between there a little bit. So
cool.
It's a drone-free community.
Oh, that's good.
We shoot them down, forget about it.
It's Florida. I know. Well, we are so grateful. And you have your own podcast. So give a shout out to what your podcast is so our listeners can come and listen as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. The podcast is called On Journey with Danny G. And it just involves some of my travel stories and some interviews with people that I've had the pleasure of traveling with. And hopefully a little wisdom weaved in there about like how to adventure travel and keep yourself safe, and maybe do it on the
cheap
budget, shoestring, right? Those kinds of things.
Economical.
On the cheap.
Some cheap, pretty much cheap. And the beautiful places around the world that I've chronicled in handwritten journals. So a lot of it is me reading the journals and expounding on that and stuff like that.
What experience. Fabulous. We got more than we bargained for today. Yeah. Fabulous experiences.
I did too. I really think I want to just give a shout out to the two of you. The fact that you came together as father and daughter and thought about doing this. It's just such a great service. It must be so fun for you.
We say it's therapeutic.
That's great.
I'm his favorite. And my sisters don't listen to this, so it's perfect. I can say it over and over again.
Well, you raised a great, intelligent, erudite, kind daughter.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I am just so grateful that I feel terrible that we haven't actually had a conversation in a long time, but I love that I get to do this. Know that I'm always here watching and supporting. If you ever need anything, whatever, I'm going to connect you with my friend Melanie too, because I think the two of you would be like just super cool, great conversation about travel and whatever. So yeah.
But you've got that great gift of presence as well as voice. It's a pleasure just listening to you. The experiences are genuine. You're it was wonderful.
Thank you very much. And I feel the same way about you, Jamie. I extend that same thing for you here.
But the one request is, as we sign off, just want to hear you say, "I'm sorry, your session is over."
That's right. No, how about this? I'm sorry, and now we'll have to stop. That's usually what I say.
Danny G, you did it again.
Right. And then I say, no, that's it. No, don't say another word. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that. That would be harmful.
Thank you. Sending you lots of love and light always.
You too. Have a great holiday season.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye, Dan.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh my goodness, Dad.
Baby, I feel
Right? Like,
I feel good.
isn't he? I told you he's like an awesome human.
Why you didn't know he was a psychologist?
I kind of knew that, but I don't realize he must have been when I
Did
knew
you meet him in a
back then.
coaching experience?
No, so we worked for a company that, do you remember I used to do work for Intel and
Yeah.
Trend Micro and like the big tech companies? So he also was a presenter. So we were at what's that big show in January? The tech show in Vegas.
Yeah, the
CES,
election.
Consumer Electronics Show. We
Yeah.
met there. So, listener, I used to work for a company. Mary Beth and Keith, if you're listening to this, hello. They gave me an opportunity to go and work with big tech companies. And I was on stage talking about their product, the face of the product. I knew nothing about technology. And Dan was also, and he worked with them too. And so we met. I think we were actually in Barcelona together, possibly in a project.
You said it wrong.
Barcelona.
Thank you very
But
much.
someone else, do you remember Joe Adamitis
Yeah.
and his wife Lisa? I met her through that same thing. So Lisa, if you're listening, and I met some of the most amazing humans. So Mary Beth and Keith, thank you again for introducing me to that. And it was a really cool time in my life that I did, early on. And he's just was a human that I met that I always enjoyed and loved. And he would always, I remember now going in San Francisco, we'd go out for dinner and he'd be like, I went to this place last night. I'm like, by yourself? He goes, yeah. He's like, come with me. And he would always find the best places to eat. And he just had like a human you just never wanted to not lose contact with. And thank you for Facebook.
Well, it's
Mark,
funny.
thanks
His,
for putting
his,
it together.
his difficult childhood growing up made him the person he is today, as it does with all of us, basically.
Yeah.
But my degree's in psychology also, but the difference is back in the 70s, the people that graduated and became working psychologists were totally whacked out.
Mm.
And I mean, often they always say a person with a bad marriage can still be a good marriage therapist. But most of my guys who became psychiatrists, it's like they're crazy. He is not crazy. He's very balanced. He's very melodious. You want to talk to him. He's got a wealth of experience.
Yeah. I want to go do a yoga class. Like I'm like I just want to I wanted to
Well, you
jump
can
to
go
the
on-
screen.
Go on that side. We're
I know,
teachers.
Insight Timer. So I'm gonna look him up and do that. So cool. I mean, it's funny because obviously you've known me my whole life, but you haven't met all the people that
Sure.
I've met in my life. And so now you get to see and be reinforced about why I should be your favorite daughter because they all think I'm so wonderful. I'm just kidding. I'm not just kidding.
Are we being recorded?
Oh, it's still recording. Oops. No, I am very fortunate. I love that I get to meet people like this, and I love that I get to introduce them to you now.
But which I also want to just reinforce, it's his journey is like all of our journeys. When we're not connected with the people and the things, you're kind of free floating out there, creating free floating anxiety. When you connect with someone, it just reaffirms the interconnectivity. You're connected whether you're not. We're all always connected. Everything has a string attached to it.
It's so true. I think that, we're all somehow interconnected for sure. I love the invisible string concept.
But you lose sight of it. You have to really feel it, live it, and believe it.
Yeah. I'm that's all. Yeah, that's it.
I think our session is over.
Oh, were you hoping I would say it at the same time?
No.
Okay. All right, team. Thank you so much for listening to us and enjoying our podcast. Whether you're listening to it, sharing it, whatever you're doing, we appreciate the support. And until next time.
Bye-bye. Happy trails. Hey, thank you for tuning into today's What's Your Story podcast.
To learn more or share your story, go to jamiemarco.com. That's www.jamiemarco.com. And we will see you next time.